All right, welcome back to a brand new video of the Targeted Individual Program. Targeted Individual Experience. This person took all of their curtains down from out of their window. All right, standing up there looking at me. All right, they'll do it. They'll do whatever to try to manipulate me, right? So, if I had turned my phone and record into their apartment, that's a no-no. You know what I'm saying? But then again, they got no blinds, so you can't expect any level of privacy when you do that, right? That's what they do. So I want you to understand how they try to manipulate situations to where they're hoping that you will make a mistake or something like that, particularly when they are the ones that are engaging in covert manipulation, right? But if you live on the ground floor and you don't have curtains in your windows, then you cannot expect any level of privacy. People can walk by and look and see right in your home, right in your house, right in your apartment. When I tell you how these religious fanatics are and the type of shit that they do, it's unbelievable, man. When you start to see the manipulation, right, whereas before you couldn't see it. I listened to Dr. Ray today, Dr. Ray Higgins, and he was saying, back when he couldn't see the programming, right? And it's funny how we talked about the programming, but those of us who can see the programming out in society, right, that, we start to look at the reality for what it is. There is no delusion in our minds, particularly when we understand. So I made a short video of a lesson he was doing today called clinging to a certain mindset, right? And he talks about, in the Bible, Luke 13, 11, what is it, 11 to 12, something like that? Anyway, I'm not sure. It could be, right? But, it tells the story of a woman who was in the synagogue, and it talks about the woman was bent over, and she couldn't look up, right? And the word that they use was infirmary or something like that, infirmary. And then but anyway, he's in this passage. Jesus says something like then she saw Jesus, and Jesus said to her, "Stand up, you are is it healed?" Something like that. Anyway, so you gotta forgive me. I just short-term memory loss, being targeted the way you target as part of the result and the effect of the negative effect of what they have done to me in terms of memory, cognition, motor skills. They love to do the whole hands up thing and the whole palm fixation thing. But as Dr. Ray was explaining, what it means is that this woman had because when you go to the original translation, right, and what it's supposed to mean, it doesn't mean that she was crippled or anything like that. I mean, what it meant is that she had what it says, she had is something mind, but it means basically this woman has held on to something for so long that it actually crippled her. You know what I'm saying? Like psychologically, not physically. And this is what happens when, for example, when things happen to us when we're younger and we don't deal with it, we don't seek therapy, we hold on to things because it angers us. I mean, listen, there's certain things that you need to hold on to, as in terms of as a lesson, and also as what as a what I'm looking for is Well, I guess you say lesson as a lesson, right? So that we don't that when you get into certain situations, you know what not to do and what to do, right? So if you made a mistake in the past, when you don't, if you can understand the reason why you made that mistake, right? And so that you don't make it again. So you might want to hold on to that, right? But in terms of holding on to things that in which you can't move forward, right? Particularly when it's something that you yourself can change, but you just don't want to, right? So you hold on to certain things. Sometimes we use our trauma to seek sympathy from others because it makes us, it makes us, it helps us to manipulate other people, I should say, right? It helps us to manipulate other people so that we can seek their sympathy. We can get things from them. We can make them do what we want them to do, that sort of thing, right? That's something, again, that you should never do, right? This is why it's important that that you heal. I was watching the Crimson Kill channel, and Kendra, she always says, she's like, black women always healing but never heal. They always in their healing phase, right? Yeah, I see. He took off the flashlight off of his phone. He's sitting there, had his flashlight on. Why you have a flashlight on your phone? It makes no damn sense, right? And then, he just looked at him and he took it off. But that's what they do. But anyhow, as she said, black women are always in their healing stage, but they never heal. And instead of getting therapy, a lot of them don't want to get therapy, and a lot of times it's because of shame. All right, a lot of times it's also because if certain things happen to them that are so traumatic that they think it hasn't happened to anybody else. And I used to feel like that as a TI. A lot of you hear a lot of TIs. We used to be on the show, FSCHS, right? What is it? Freedom from Covert Harassment, FHCHS. And a lot of TIs would be on the wall. They did this to me and they did this to me, and no one, no other TI is targeted. I'm targeted. I'm just like, look, everybody's targeted. Some even worse than you. And they're like, no, how dare you say that? And I'm a perp and all this stuff. So I get to understand how we can personalize trauma so much that we think is just that we are traumatized the worst, right? You know what I'm saying? Those very same people who would say that, then they will meet another TI who try to commit self-deletion, right? And to me, that's worse, because when they get you to that point where you feel like you have to self-delete, then to me that means that they've literally effed up your mind so much that that's the only way that you see out, and to stop them from targeting you. So like I said, my brother, he's a TI. I would never say that my targeting is worse than his. His is worse than mine. Okay? That even today, he may not have certain thoughts anymore, but I would never say it because I understand what he went through. I've been there. Not been there, but in terms of doing the same thing, but I've seen him, being by his side, and stuff like that. So I understand. This is why, he's also part of the reason why I decided to study what it is that they were doing and to continue to expose them, And this is why whenever he calls me for advice, I literally have to think before I give him any sort of advice, because I want to make sure that the advice that I give him comes from me, not from some, not from silent sound being manipulated to tell him things that will, lead him in a certain path that will be detrimental to him. So like I said, it is my purpose, right? It is my purpose, right? He said, you love his Wi-Fi. I love my Wi-Fi. A wife. That's what he says. There can be wife, right? Because Yeah, I love my Wi-Fi. You got the shirt. I love my Wi-Fi. Like, okay. So yeah, and this is what you have to understand as TI. So, we all have dealt with trauma as target individuals, right? Poor people deal with trauma every single day. Poverty is trauma in itself, right? You need to understand that, right? Working class people who work 2 to 3 jobs, making minimum wage, that's traumatizing. That's trauma, right? So we have to understand that, right? The vast majority of people living in this world today have trauma because they're surviving. They're not living, they're surviving. When you have very few who are living, who have caused mass income inequality, who've created mass poverty. Right? So, but anyhow, so you have to understand it. And that's the thing, is that once they get you to accept poverty as normal, okay, then what do you think is going to happen? I talk about the science of it, right? Epigenetics, when we produce or create children, right, within their genetic structure, they become more adapted to poverty. So then the next generation will suffer more extreme poverty, right? But it wouldn't affect them in a way that, like I said, when you look at white people who just have the feeling of being disenfranchised, you see what they do, right? When we as black people, we've been disenfranchised, globally, even in Africa, you know what I'm saying? And we are used to it, right? Because we are the descendants of those that came before us that also suffer. So suffering for us, not only just because we're also religious, because we equate suffering to Jesus, who we say is perfect. That's why I say black men, you have no chance with Christian black women. Okay, I mean Negropean women, right? Because their perfect man is white, blue eyes, long hair, and his name is Jesus. Understand that, right? Now they may say they love you, they may marry you, have kids with you, but if a white man dressed as Jesus walked by or approached them, he has their attention, not you, black man. Understand that. Okay? Understand that. All right? So you got to understand, our condition, how we're manipulated, how, our subconscious is a program. So as Dr. Ray says, we are programmed. And that's what it is. It's a mind program. Right? So anyhow, as I was leaving, again, the New York fecal department came out using their sirens. The fire department came out using their sirens. And Pam, I want you to just, know how transactional she has become. All right, and I guess she might have always been transactional, but I never really paid any mind to it. You know what I'm saying? But I came. I did laundry. I did laundry all week. Her laundry as well as the kids' laundry. And whatever little bit of clothes that I wear when I'm there. And so she came and she asked me today to do laundry. I said, okay, fine. I did the laundry, what have you. She's complaining to me about her foot hurts. I'm like, but this is after. Listen to this. So after I did laundry, came back upstairs, went to the bathroom. She was feeding the kids, and then she asked me if I was ready to eat, and I was taken aback by it. Because for the past couple of months, there are times where she would ask me if I want something to eat, and she would, serve me a plate of food, but that's very rare. Most of the time, it's like, oh, if there's food there if you want, you can go get it after feeding the kids. So, but because I know how transactional she is, you know, I'm like, okay, I guess maybe she figures, you know, she has to do laundry, so I did the laundry, so that's why, right? Nope. So after I finished eating, I went to put my plate in the sink, and she approached me. She's like, "Oh, my feet hurt so much. Can you massage my feet?" And I looked at her. I didn't even say nothing. Right? I didn't say nothing at all. Yeah, I was about to say no. I said, let you know, your man do it. Whoever he does that, you know, blowing your back out, let him do it. You know what I'm saying? Or she, or whoever the hell, you know, that person is, let them do it. You know, my days of massaging your feet, that's done. Even, you know, I would say because again, not because of that in particular, but because of how she treats me, right? The way that she speaks to me at times, and I just like, yo, you know what? No, I'm not doing that. Right? So, yeah. So anyhow, so then I ain't saying nothing to her at all. She went into her bedroom, and you know, I was getting dressed, ready to leave, and I said, you know what? Maybe I just give her a 5 minute foot massage. But her feet was so swollen that I was like, I can't do this right now because I gotta go, and it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a while. It's gonna take at least, you know, 15 minutes on each foot to, you know. So she's like, oh no, it's not. I said, yes it is. I'm not gonna do it. I said, maybe I'll come tomorrow. And she's like, oh, you coming tomorrow? I'm like, okay, Pamela. You don't want Ethan, I already gave Ethan the keys back, so obviously you don't want me to come.
But she touched more bread than I ever touched in my life.
So anyhow, and again, it's because she went out last night again. I said she went out on Thursday night, and then she went out last night again. So now her feet is hurting. Look at these people, just leaving their kids all over the place. Look. This little kid just comes down right side of me. Not this one, this one right here. Yo, this your kid? This is your child? Little child just comes down right beside me. I'm just like, what the hell's wrong with these people? You don't know me, you let your children come next to me like that? You know, anyhow, he way over there having his daughter come over here. That's why I have to ask him, like, yo, this your daughter or your daughter? Right? But anyhow, you know, so I left. I'm like, you know, listen, it's like I said to her all the time. I said, listen, I do what I do because I want to. Right? But when you engage in such behavior because, you know, or have you, like I said, you know, whenever she's, you know, not, I guess whenever her relationship with whoever it is not going well, all of a sudden she's calling me, this and that, and such and such. And I keep telling her, listen, this is who you are. I understand, and I accept that, right? But I'm not going to do things that I used to do before. That's not going to happen, okay? It's not going to happen, right? So, you know, like I said, this is very transactional. That the fact that I did laundry wasn't enough. You know, so she figured by serving me food that I'm supposed to, like, you know. When like I said, transactional, right? Transactional. You know, you know, it isn't because, you know, you care for a person, not these women today. These women have narrowed men down to our wallets, to the car we drive. You know, such that, I mean, before, back in the days, yeah, women had a nice car, well, you couldn't attract a woman, you know, happy. You know, but they would generally care for you. But not today. Not today. Not today. You know, a woman back then, even if you had a nice car, you wasn't an attractive man, you know, unless you were super wealthy, you know, then they'll give you you know, a time of the day. But if you wasn't, no. You know what I'm saying? No. And now the loyalty is the idea of commitment to them is out the window. You know, and then we got into a little bit today earlier when I said that. I said, you know, y'all trying to be like men. So she says, you know, yeah, but you sound like a feminist. I said, I am a feminist. I'm just not a toxic feminist man. And the reason why she called me a feminist because I said to her, you know, she was like, oh, I said to her, you know, you try to make everything equal, right? But we are not equal. She's like, well, it should be equal. I said, first of all, Pamela, okay, if you're talking about, you know, in terms of rights, then yeah, we should be equal. But I said, you know, you can have kids. I can't. How? So obviously we're not equal in that aspect, right? You know what I'm saying? You know, I said to her, you have more, as a black woman, you have more information in your DNA than I do as a black man, right? So in that aspect, again, I am not your equal. So because of that, she said, I'm a feminist. I said, no, it's just biology, it's facts. Right? Something that women don't understand. Are you getting on the bus? Okay, thank you.